did what was probably one of my most intense saturated scenes that I've done in a really long time, just going with all Marvy pads and going for like 100% intensity in terms of the brightness scale, dull being kind of real pastels, and super bright being the really super vivid hot colors of hot versions of every color out there in the spectrum that I happen to be working with, which I really enjoyed doing. But I feel like doing I was looking at this photo earlier today on Flickr of some people that I've subscribed to, and there's this photograph up by one of the photographers that I follow on there, and he had a photograph called Inyo Dreams, meaning Inyo County, I'm sure. But it just had those crepuscular rays coming down over these mountains, and I really like the composition. Really simple one, just of a lot of hills. I'm going to be doing more of these kind of peaks here. But I thought that we'd do something like that. It was a real muted color scheme. It's kind of, there have been some slightly warm grays in there, warms and cool grays, but for the most part, fairly neutral. But we'll try to get in a few little kind of spots of temperature in there with some very dull temperatures here. Dull in terms of, again, not interest, but intensity. Alright, so that was the tall peak right here, and I'm going to supplement that with some of the rocky peaks here, and then we might use some other types of things down here. But these two designs are meant to go together. I faded that out a little bit on the bottom part. I don't know if I should have done that, because I don't know if that's really what I'm going for in this one, but that's usually what I do with these mountain stamps. They're all designed, as everything is, to blend in with one another. I really should be kind of blotting off from the top down, so I get that top highlighting, but it might work out better this way, to kind of go the traditional route. We're not going with photographic prints here, but we're going to try to blend these images together. Okay. And we're going to be using white, ink, not light, to define things, so sometimes it's just easier to go this direction. I'm talking about the fading aspect from dark to light down here. Alright, so anyways, so those two are merged together like that. By the way, this is a half-size sheet of glossy. I was thinking about doing this on matte too, with some hybrid ink, so I really want to get back to some hybrid ink experimentation, but I don't know. I felt like doing this. I just did another lesson on Stampscapes U for University, and I was doing these grayscale types of exercises, which are really, really fun to do. And as kind of just some basic applications for defining lighting within your scenes. Okay, and now I'm thinking about going, I can build these down here and build up this whole rocky peak type of bank of mountain structures here, but I think I'm going to go for something kind of more foothills, oriented down below. So let me grab my large block here. This large block pretty much takes everything. Ideally, it'd be a little bit more narrow for my purposes, but this will do just fine. Okay. What I meant by that statement, this will do just fine. Usually you don't have like so much space, above your, stamp that you're stamping, because you don't want things kind of rocking when you're applying them, but so be it. Okay, let's see here. Let's go with this down about like so. I'm doing the scene here. It should come together reasonably fast. In terms of the execution of imagery, as well as the tone, when you're not working with so many different colors, the scenes can come together pretty fast, even if you are working. For me, fairly large scale, half-size piece of paper is pretty big for me. I probably work in quarter-size cards about, 75% of the time maybe, and the other, 20% is probably a half sheet of paper, and then 5% is, full sheet. And then on this channel, I have done tabloid 11 by 17. That's pretty crazy, though. I hardly ever do that. Or I've only done that maybe twice, I think. Okay, let's go for this other one right here. This is for my island set here. But it's not really going to be an island, it's just kind of a little foothill mountain down here. Okay, kind of establishing this, I don't know. It's like us looking down on, from a certain vantage point down into this area, and that'll be like this, I don't know if it's not really a canyon, but just kind of at the base of the hills going back to the distance like that. Then, let's add in our cloud structure above. And that's the thing that kind of defines those light rays. It's you kind of have to have some kind of break in some moisture content in order to establish that type of cloud lighting convention. All right. Let me get these things put away first. It's real easy to lose this kind of top off your tack and peel. Mostly with the smaller ones, but larger ones kind of get a little bit lost in the shuffle, at least on my desk sometimes. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to... My inclination is to do that in a gray, but I think I'm going to go for this one in black. This is called Cloud Space, okay? And if I do stamp this out, it's made of dots, so it's not going to be like a solid black and real dark up there, But I think I am going to blot it first, just so I get a lighter version of it, okay? Like that. Because I am going to do some layering, and you often do see that in the sky. You see different layers of clouds, stratus clouds amongst cumulus and what is there? Altocumulus, nimbus, cumulonimbus, I don't know, all that stuff out there. Fun terms. Okay, this is the altocumulus cloud. Alright. So it'll give us a little bit more texture and variation. So let's do this one up top here. I could wipe some of this off too. Let's do that a little bit, just so it kind of transitions. Okay. As well. Okay, so we have that. Looks like a textural kind of kind of mess right now. It all comes together with the use of tone, though. All right, let's keep this really easy though, okay? I'm going to have some light rays coming down here into the scene. Okay, and that's where the drama is going to come from. So let's start establishing some lights and darks. Let me keep this real easy for you in terms of the application strategy though, okay? Like on a lot of these mountains, there's some darker areas and some lighter. I'm going to follow a lot of that convention when toning this in. So where it's kind of darker anyway, I'm going to add more tone, and where it's fairly light, I'll kind of leave that somewhat as is. Not really. I don't want it just the white of the paper. I want some tone in there so that when I add in the white rays, we'll be able to see something. If it's white on white, we won't be able to see anything. So, okay, so let's play around with some of these colors too, okay? It'll start to kind of come together when I get all the way to the black. So all of these really super light preliminary colors, you're not going to really kind of see a resolve in terms of lighting. Okay, so these are all kind of base coats, but they do add up to the overall though, okay? Okay, now, here's the thing. Retain some white though, especially up in your sky area, okay? Don't tone out everything. Don't see everything as a whole. That's what I was mentioning in my lighting lesson. You have to have some white of the paper there, okay? Or areas that are light. In this case, it's white because I'm going to be using some white ink in here. So you're saying that there's some white light within the scene, okay? So, that being said, alright, again, this is just your standard paper towel here. I'm picking up some of that black there too, so it's kind of mixing a little bit. I'm almost done with this first color. It's pretty fast. I did re-ink. This is antique linen, and I did re-ink that a few days ago, so it's pretty juicy. It's a pretty wet pad, inked up pad. Okay, but do you see where some of that white is in there? Right in here. And I'll have those rays coming out of that area. Okay, but we really have no clue at this point in time, kind of like, a real definitive lighting strategy. It'll kind of come around later on. Not too much longer, though. This is going really fast. All right, let's try some of this milled lavender. Yeah. Let's check it out. It's kind of kind of lavender. It's certainly an antiqued-looking lavender, though. It reminds me of that hue that's in depression glass. Does anyone know what that is? I don't know any people who collect that type of thing anymore. Okay, kind of adding this here and there. Add it on top of some of my mountains, peaks, kind of streaking it into the sky. It's kind of irregular, which is what I'm going for here. All right, this weatherwood. I think this is the one that I found out my teaching supplies. I don't even remember using it very much, but it's kind of like a pale gray. Okay, which I probably can just bypass. It's almost too. I need a re-inker for it. It's just too light. It's not bad though. Can kind of add it into the mix here. Okay, I think that looks good. See how I'm doing this? I'm usually pulling in from the outside edge in like that. Okay. It's not terribly important with these really pale colors right now, but when I move into black, which I'll do right now, it becomes a little bit more important. Maybe, I don't know, the page is fairly wet, but so I don't want to have, these types of shapes showing up, in the middle of my page. So what I'm doing is I'm taking it in like that, and I'm kind of streaking it in. Think of it as, I don't know, not like anyone here is listening to Shine Shoes before, probably. I don't know. But think of it like that. You're kind of dabbing around, you're not like scrubbing in something. You're just kind of, going along the surface and kind of glazing, these colors into the piece. See that? I never have like real definitive kind of, marks that are hard and set fast. Okay, I mean, part of it is the glossy cardstock, but it's not completely, not absorbent. If I put, a mark like that, let it set up, it'll still remain there. So by and large, just kind of, light approach, light touch, and, application. Okay. All right. Anyways, you see what this is, this paper towel it's working pretty good. I might start using my stylus tool. I have some kind of specific areas to get in these mountains, and having kind of a wider applicator, I could make it more narrow like that, but the stylus tools are very convenient for a little bit more of a specific areas, and of course we can always use things like alcohol markers or whatever type of markers you have as well. And I know a lot of you have a lot of gray scale markers. Grays often come in a lot of sets. Okay. See the lighting starting to appear on some of those mountains. Let's make it a little bit stronger, in terms of kind of the retention of some of those light areas, contrasted with the shading that you're putting into some other areas makes the mountains look so much more dimensional now, right? And like I said, I've added the tones into the mountains in kind of strategic areas, so you can just kind of follow the conventions, the lighting conventions that are already established in the designs. If I've added a lot of tone in an area, just add additional tone in that area. Gonna see where that lighting is kind of coming through up there. Stronger, darker you make certain areas of your card, the lighter the lights are going to seem. It doesn't mean you should do it on like a full, super bright day type of thing, having the corners dark or black, but you can make them darker though. It could be a pale gray or blue or something like that up in the sky. And it'll pay dividends in terms of kind of the containment of imagery. This is going pretty well. I'm starting to have a little bit of a fraying on me, but this is like I don't know, an eighth of a piece of paper towels. They're not talking about something, well, I don't know, maybe right now it's precious in terms of paper goods being kind of hoarded or whatever. But, there's certainly a degree of a conservation of a, you know, medium here when we're using something like this. Okay, I'm trying to make this a little bit darker up at the top, and as I go over down here, this area up here is becoming a little bit, drier as we speak, and it's allowing me to apply more of this black ink onto that area, where before it was kind of saturated with those inks that came before it, and it's kind of acting as a little bit of a resist, so you kind of have to let those areas dry up a little bit, or dry, so they're drier. You don't have to dry completely, but at some point in time when you're doing this, when you get into those darker tones, it's like nothing's being, you're practically wiping ink off of your card at times. That's what it feels like, just because you're going wet into, kind of a damp surface, with the pulp of the paper being kind of in danger of being super saturated, which isn't a bad thing. It allows you to apply things fairly, evenly and smoothly and whatnot. But when you want to get darker, it's kind of nice if the ink's set up a little bit faster. That's why I love demonstrating out in Arizona. Well, it's drier out there anyways, but in that conventional, they had the air conditioning just blasting. Everyone at the show was freezing, but the air was just so dry, so I didn't have to wait at all for, my kind of base layer coats to dry before I went in, through all the other colors and even into the darkest one. It was awesome. Okay. See this little kind of hill here? Let's kind of establish a little bit of a kind of shadow coming out from it. Or, well, maybe it's not a shadow, but just, it's kind of this anchoring, I don't know, landform or whatnot. See, like that, where I came into it that way, like that. Okay, now with this, I can kind of get into some of these areas, and I tilt my tip on end a little bit like that, so I can get in some of these little areas. And again, what I'm looking for is just some of those areas that are darker on the image. You don't have to, you don't have to stay with that kind of shading convention hard and fast, but it's a good place to start off with, if you're kind of uncertain as to what to tone, what to shade, and what to leave alone. Just look at the design, observe the design, make it visual. Don't make it kind of theoretical. You want to look and see. Okay, kind of see the sponge kind of allows me to apply a lot more ink too. Alright, this is pretty good in here, but it's a little bit, it's a little bit too light for me. Let's get a little bit of tone to that. Okay. I just washed off my applicators here. They're a little bit watery. Anyways, can you see I'm kind of putting a little bit of tone on those mountains? But see how I'm varying it? we're not treating everything exactly the same. These little areas in here, a little area in there. I mean, I could add a little tone to. It's the shaded area, so you come into it like this. I have this upside down because I can see what I'm doing easier this way. I can see the edge of that, and I can see where this edge meets the, that background ridge, the back ridge, or whatever, the ridge that's farther away. Okay. Add some striations in the sky horizontally. I mean, I'm applying them in more of a vertical application here, but they'll be horizontal. When looked upright, it's just easier to pull down like this in terms of your application style and method. It's the motion of your hand is kind of natural that way. Okay, there we have it, like so. Alright, but here's the drama now. Okay. Let's start applying those light beams. Okay, I need to kind of make a I need to make not a diagram of this, but let's see, let's come up here. Okay, I'm looking for a good kind of vanishing point for these rays. We'll say that the rays aren't coming from like right here, but kind of farther off in the distance. Maybe off the page a little bit. I'm trying to figure out the angle I want to bring into. Okay, so I'm going to go right here. So I need to just kind of make a mark of where this paper goes, so I don't kind of lose track. Okay, so I have my little marks right here, and that's my vanishing point. Okay, the vanishing point is going to be where all of these beams are emanating from. Okay, so you need to keep that kind of static. You don't want to. I mean, it can vary a little bit, but you don't want it to go from here to here to here like an inch. Otherwise, it'll kind of look weird. I mean, if you're doing like a stage set where you really want to make it look like a stage production, you can have like multiple light sources, but I mean, something like this is supposed to be representative of, something you'd see in reality, as opposed to like a stage production where You know, it's its own world with multiple spotlights and things like that. Okay, so here's my cotton ball. I think it's time for a new cotton ball. But we'll just go with this one. It's kind of looking a little ratty. It's not... I need to find a kind of a smooth part of it. I'll just have to make it myself. So this is just your normal cotton ball. I'm guessing it's probably, you know, real cotton. It's, you know, in other words, it's not like one of those acrylic ones. I find that this works better. It's just softer and more kind of malleable. All right, now, okay, before I go on here, this is the thing that I tend to forget about. Let's add in a few highlights with a white paint pen in here first, because it's harder to kind of drawing on top of white pigment ink, you know, like a layer of white pigment ink. So let's go in with this. This is, you can use a white gel pen. This is a white Miaosun acrylic painter. It's pigment ink. It says it's waterproof, but I don't know, that seems kind of weird to me. I didn't know it was waterproof. Okay, but anyways, what I'm doing here is I'm kind of adding some little highlights on the tops of some of these ridges, okay? So even if I did color them in a little bit too much, you can just kind of reestablish some of that white. With this, it could just be lighting, it could be snow, whatever you want it to be. In my case, I think it'll be more representative of lighting because I'm going to have light coming from above. So those areas that are kind of facing the light and close to them might have a little bit of this highlighting on them. So this ridge right here where it's lighter, I can put kind of a stronger kind of illumination on the top of it like this. In one of these areas I kind of smudged the bottom portion. That I didn't really mean to do, but you know, you can just go in with a, you know, a highlighting, you know, or a pen like this and just kind of take all those things right out of there. Kind of those unintentional marks. So that's why most of the times I wouldn't say I'm careful. I mean, I'm mindful of, you know, where I'm adding things, but it's, you know, things happen all the time too. To my scenes, in the process of them, that other people might just say, "Oh my God," you know, and that's not what I wanted. So they kind of have a kind of a reaction towards it, and then they quit working on it. For me, I mean, the same things are happening, not in worse degrees, but I just know that in the end, you know, with all the other things that happen, applications and media and colors that you're going to add, it just, I don't know, those things don't matter in the end result. It's just, it all comes together, you know, so you just kind of have to trust the process. Okay, so let me add some of it up here. Some of that, those white beams will be coming out of the clouds, so I can illuminate some of these areas in here like they're, you know, reflecting some of that light, you know, that we will see. It's kind of hard to envision right now. And it's hard for me to envision too. I mean, I've done these light beams before, but this one's going to be a little bit different. I have it coming out of these kind of alto cumulus style clouds that I saw in that kind of photo. Okay, so I'd say that's about right. It's kind of like, I don't know, scumbling around a lot of little types of marks on here. scumbling is like when you take a dry, like paintbrush and you just kind of go in and add little textures, you know, to some painting. I'm not doing a painting here. Well, this is a paint pen, but kind of going around and adding those little touches here and those little textural things. And in this case, it happens to be a lighting thing too, because this is a white pen and we're putting white onto, you know, gray or whatever, so it's standing out. It looks like white. Okay, so let's see here. Can't use that top page. Let's use this one right here. We have our vanishing point right there. That's where our light source is coming from. Kind of see these things right here. I'm not going to tape this down, you know, it's not, you know, something like that. You know, we don't need to be that, you know, super careful. And, you know, we're not talking millimeters or anything like that. That's not that important. Okay, so I'll go like that. I think I'm changing up here. Let's go from this. Let's make it a little bit higher. That'll give me a kind of a wider vanishing point. Okay, let's go with this right up here. I didn't want things to be converging so small right here, you know, where I'd have this really super narrow beam. So I'm making it off the page a little bit more up there so that this area isn't so narrow. See, if I come down here, I mean, you could do it, you know, like that. See, if I have that beam, it's going to be really narrow up top here. You know, even if I go really super, like, you know, wide like this, you know, that area right there is fairly narrow. So I don't want it quite so narrow. In this case, I want the light to be spread out more. Okay. Now you have to kind of figure out where you want it to go. And go like this. Running out of space on my desk here. Okay, let's go with this. I'm not going all the way up here. The light is going to be coming out from kind of down in this area. I'm just using some hero hues. I have no idea what all that pink is. It's like confetti in there, you know, like cotton candy, and what that violet and all that pink is from. I don't know if I'm picking up colors on here and then transferring them. I'm not sure where they look like little spots like that. But anyway, okay. So let's see. All right. Oops, I went way up high again. I forgot already. The thing I just told you. Come down a little bit lower, like so. Now, I'll show you what this looks like here in a minute, or less than that. This is a really wide beam here, so I'm kind of varying it. I don't have it as thick on both sides. I don't have just a solid beam of white here. I'm kind of varying it a little bit. A little bit lighter here, a little bit darker, a little bit, you know, lighter like that. So it looks like this right here, okay? It looks really weird right now because we don't have the other beams established. And in fact, let me go a little bit more. Maybe I varied this one a little bit too much. Let's get a little bit on this side, the bottom portion of that beam, like that. Okay. Go over like this. Okay, there's another beam like that. It's a little bit heavier. Okay, I just wanted to vary from that other one a little bit. Okay, now let's give it a little bit of space here. Oops. Get that reestablished and in place. I'll have another beam coming down, maybe right here, but I won't have it coming in front of this hill, okay? So it'll be going somewhere in the valley, maybe. Okay, like that. Let's come this way. Let's have some kind of disappearing behind that kind of background hill. Yeah, let's make it a little higher up. Can you see that beam going out that way? Okay, that. I just do it one at a time. I mean, I don't have a kind of a definitive kind of notion about how many of these I want to do. I just kind of do them one at a time, and you know, if I think, yeah, it looks okay, or you know, there's some other areas missing something, maybe then I'll add another one, or okay, these ones are too far apart, then I'll add another one in between, or a thinner one, or thicker, whatever needs to be done. I just kind of address it as I go along. Let's go a little bit wider out this way. I'll make this one really faint if I can. I don't want it to stand out too much over there. I'll try to taper it maybe a little bit lighter up by the mountain and just taper it going down like that. See that one? How kind of darker, how much darker it is. Like that. If you ever don't like any of it, if you're doing it on glossy, it'll just wipe right off for you. I mean, it is setting up, so it'll set up better. But all right, so I think that let's do that over here too. Kind of that behind the mountain type of little peekaboo light. Okay, let's come out here. Alright, it's just a tiny, thin, little, narrow beam, okay? And it's in a fairly dark area, so I'm not going to make this too light. It'll be just a little bit. Kind of just using a very light tapping application. Okay. Something like that. I don't know if I like that. It might look okay. Alright, now let's take a look at this beam right here. There's a fairly large one. I'm going to do a beam and a beam here and try to make this one look a little bit more more dimensional. You can make your beams look more dimensional too. It's not just, it doesn't have to be this kind of flat thing. You can kind of go over it like this. So I'm going over kind of a wider beam, and I'm putting a narrow beam on top of it, okay? So, you know, chances are some of these beams would be stacked, okay? You don't just have one, you'd have, you know, multiples coming, you know, in a given area. So I'll try to make this one, this narrow one, kind of a little bit more opaque over the top of a more kind of transparent, translucent one. Okay, so right there. It's kind of like a beam within a beam. I like that. It's a little bit, it's not tapered enough though, huh? Let's kind of taper it a little bit. Let's go like that. Or, I tell you what, let's do it this way. Okay, so there's that. So that beam, it's a little bit more, the beam itself is a little bit more three-dimensional that way. Alright, so we have that light coming out from up there. So let's try to make this area around here, let's diffuse it with some additional white up here. Okay. So after I put in the beams, I always kind of mellow things out a little bit from the, a lot of times around the source. You know, it stands to reason that it would be fairly light around there because that's where the light is coming from. Okay, that's where the kind of strongest point would be. And on the top sides of some of these ridges here, okay, I don't like outlines in my designs, but I have to have kind of a defining line in some of them. But most of the times I like to make them tonal, so this is a way to kind of eradicate some of that tone, or it doesn't really eradicate it, it makes them a little bit more subdued, making it look a little bit more kind of three-dimensional that way. Okay, and up here there's this kind of break in the clouds where some of those rays are coming from. So I'll just kind of soften up that area with a little bit more tone. I need a new cotton ball. It's getting a little bit saturated. Okay, that was a little bit too much, so I can go in here and I'm just kind of blending that out a little bit. Okay. See that lighting there? That's kind of starting to take place, especially around those mountains. Now down here, where we have that kind of bottom illumination, where I've wiped off the bottom of the stamps before I put them in here, what I'll do is I'll just run some of this down here and kind of run some of that actual lighter media over the top of those lighter stamped areas. Okay. And it kind of helps out with the illumination quite a bit. Okay. Just a real light touch in this, okay? It's like think of it like you're trying to add like powder or something on something, as opposed to something really thick and kind of instantaneous, okay? But let's take a look at that. See that area, that little hill down here, how I've used that white pigment ink, and the white pigment ink around here, kind of adding to that idea of illumination. Where some of these hills are getting hit with some of those beams, I'll kind of subdue the impression right around there. I used black to stamp it out, and there must have been some green on it though too, because it stamped a little bit green, but that's fine. Okay, you can kind of just build this up in the background where you want that lighting to be. So this is why I said to kind of retain, those lighter areas in there. It's because it really gives you an opportunity to add a lot of this type of effect into those areas. Okay, top of this grassy hill here. Put some illumination on top of that. It gives the hills and objects something in common with those beams. The beams are just so prominent and dynamic of an element when you add them into a scene that it's good to add some of that media somewhere else within your scene, just so that it gives the scene something in common with those beams. You're saying that those beams are influencing the area down below. And those beams, they do represent kind of moisture or dust or something like that, sediment in the air that's being illuminated. Okay, so you put that element in other areas. Some of those mountains right back in there are really awash in light. Okay, let's see if I can get this a little bit lighter up here. The pigment ink does dry darker, okay? So you have to take it a little bit lighter, when you're first doing this, than what you think looks ideal, okay? Because it'll dry darker. You'll be able to, it's more see-through and transparent as it dries. Okay. All right, so kind of the grandeur of the hills type of thing working here. Kind of the longest thing that you do is with the pigment ink, more than all the other elements and color, you know, overlapping and things like that. It's kind of the white, you know, it's an additive process, but it, you know, it's almost subtractive because you're going back to the light in some of those areas like that. So anyway, assessing. Let's see. Let's add a little bit right over here. I have a lot of the ink on my fingertips right now, so sometimes when I dab off like that, I'm thinking I'm going to be removing some or blending it out, but I'm actually adding it a lot. It's all over my fingers. It says that's waterproof. Oh no, was this the one that's... Oh no, the pen said it was waterproof, not this one. But, I mean, this cleans off what I was getting at. So that even if you do get it all over your fingers, it just washes right off, no problem. Okay. I think that is it. Right there. Kind of the grandeur of the mountains. Mountain light. Be an appropriate title, I guess. Let me get a couple of little specific areas in here. Okay, just right around that mountain. Even though it is dark, you can really illuminate one side of it that's kind of facing the light like that. See that right there? I just illuminated that side like that. Okay, I can maybe do it over here too. On the sides of the mountain, the peaks that are kind of facing the light, you know, you can kind of really add your illuminating touches to those areas like that. All right, fun stuff. Another scene kind of influenced, or very influenced by a photo. It's a good exercise, like I always tell people, if you kind of set out with some sort of a model to go off of and to try to replicate in terms of composition, lighting, colors, whatever, you can pick up a lot of things that you normally might not, you know, just kind of using kind of your existing repertoire of techniques and, you know, methodology and whatever colors and all that fun stuff. On this one, for me, well, I don't know. I learned something about the combination of the cloud space and alto cumulus. I don't know, the strength of the beams over grayscale, varying grayscale values in the background, and things like this right here, like that little beam coming out that way. I like that one a lot. I think that was a really important one. So kind of the flare. I don't know, these little fingery types of things like that, they're such a strong kind of player in terms of the, you know, getting your attention in a scene that they play such significant little roles. Varying them, okay, so putting the beam over the beam right here, so that doesn't just look like a flat kind of one-dimensional or two-dimensional space. It's like 3 dimensions, you know, so kind of beams within beams are a good idea. And certainly the strength and the amount of the thickness of the layer of beam comes into play, which I knew before, but anyway, okay, let's see. Fun stuff. Hope you liked the scene. And thanks for tuning into the video.